This is huge for the New York Islanders as we finally have a concrete update on the status of Anthony Duclair after what was a disaster of a first season on Long Island, a season that ended with Anthony Duclair taking a leave of absence from the team after Patrick Waugh called his play god awful. And to be perfectly fair to Patrick Waugh, Anthony Duclair was god awful for the Islanders, but we now have more information about just how injured Anthony Duclair was playing. We now know how he's feeling going into next season and what his current relationship is with the New York Islanders and, most importantly, Patrick Waugh. We're going to break it all down on this episode of Islanders Digest. Talk about whether or not Duclair can bounce back for the Islanders and what that will look like. And I will say, as someone who's covered Duclair a couple times during this offseason, having all this information, I do think us as the fan base are being a little too harsh with Duclair. Yes, last season was not good, and I know you guys are already in the comments getting ready to type about how the Islanders should trade him. The reality of the situation is Duclair is not going anywhere. Really, the only way for him to get off the New York Islanders would be to play better, because you look at what he looked like last season, putting up 7 goals and 4 assists in 44 games for 11 points for $3.5 million. Nobody is going to trade for that. That is not going to happen unless Duclair significantly improves his play. So the best case scenario for both the team and Duclair himself is for him to have a bounce back year for the Islanders. Unfortunately, I do think there is some optimism, although definitely not as confident that Duclair is going to bounce back than when it comes to other players. And part of it just has to do with what this injury was and how Duclair is feeling now. We're going to get right into the quotes. The big quote, Duclair said, "Obviously, we know the injury. I tore tore my groin right off the bone, 5th game last year. The injuries happen. They're out of my control. The timeline given to me was 4 to 6 weeks. It was a little tough. 3.5 weeks, I didn't have a groin. It still was not connected back to the bone. So I just feel like I came back too early, getting back skating early, skated with the team too early, ended up playing too early." And looking at this first quote, it is very clear that Duclair should not have came back last season, definitely should not have come back as early as he did. But really, this is something that, as we're going to go into other quotes, this is he's dealt with all offseason. And the fact that it took him all offseason and he's still not 100%, he should not have been playing last season. I give him credit for trying. And looking at his play, it makes a lot of sense now that we know just how injured he was, especially considering Duclair is a player who relies on his skating ability. He added, "It hindered me for the rest of the season. I basically played on one leg. As a player, you don't want to be on the sidelines. You want to be playing out there, battling with the boys. That's what I tried to do. Obviously, it wasn't good for anyone for me to be out there." He goes on to add, "I talked to Patty. Patty reached out over the summer. He drove down to Montreal, which I really appreciated. He apologized for his comments. I told him I didn't need an apology. I just needed him to know I was playing hurt. And he told me he really didn't know the extent of the injury. I think it was just miscommunication by everyone, myself included. He was obviously thought I was playing 100%, which I wasn't. Coming back early kind of hindered me during the offseason as well. Didn't have the train that I wanted, but I'm feeling much better. I'm feeling better out here. Should be ready to go." And this should be ready to go kind of hints at the fact that there's really no guarantee that Duclair is going to be ready. He has said that he expects to play in game 1, but this was a really serious injury. And I think the big takeaway about this is just how injured Anthony Duclair was playing, and that really factored into that god-awful play that Patrick Waugh pointed out. Groin injuries are no joke, and one concern I do have when it comes to Anthony Duclair is how this is going to look. Recently we've been talking about Matt Barzal saying he doesn't know if he'll ever fully feel 100%. He came out today and clarified that he is 100%. He's ready to go. He's not worried about the knee at all. I think that was just Barzal being a little too honest and a little overthinking his injury status when he was previously asked that question. But with Anthony Duclair, when you hurt your groin, there's really no certainty that things are going to be the same when you recover. Duclair is also a 30-year-old player. While that does make it so that I definitely think he can recover, it also is no guarantee that he's going to quite be the player he was before. Still, one thing that is very encouraging when it comes to Anthony Duclair, when he first signed that contract, if Islanders Digest had existed at the time, I would have said it was a steal. For the player who was going to play with Matt Barzal on the first line, that was really solid value. You were really paying a discount for, again, a player who in the previous season had in 17 games put up 15 points on the Lightning playing on their first line. Before that, he had 27 points which in 56 games, which isn't a ton until you keep in mind that that was playing with the San Jose Sharks, which were a complete mess of a franchise. The 2 years before that, he had had a 58-point season with the Panthers. So this was a guy you were coming in and expecting perhaps 50 or so points, 45 plus. You were expecting him to be a contributor on your top six, and you were not paying him for that price. As a result, Duclair does not have to bounce back to those previous numbers for this to be a success, both for him and the Islanders. At $3.5 million, I think if Duclair can just be a solid depth guy, if he can give you good minutes and be a strong third line player, putting up 35 or so points, this works for the Islanders. This works for Duclair. Whether they want to keep him long term or at that production, you would be able to move this player. Really, that $3.5 million does alleviate the situation. Again, too, this is not some 7-year contract. It is 4 years, but the Islanders only have 3 more years where they have to remain with Anthony Duclair on that deal. It does make the situation a bit simpler. Still, this bounce back is not guaranteed. And I think that's really highlighted in his last quote here that I really want to discuss. He says, "I'm just being the best I can be. I know what type of player I am." That was shown right before I got hurt here. Those first 5 games, 2 goals, 1 assist. That's the player I am. Obviously, my speed and my skating are my number one asset. Once I came back, you saw probably struggling with that aspect. Something that was going on. For me, I'm just looking forward to getting back to the way I was. I want to be back to 100% sure. Use my speed and my skill. So here, Duclair is clarifying that he still is not 100% recovered from this groin injury that he had in the first week of last season. I think a big part of that is he returned to the ice too early, and it really highlights if he's still not feeling 100% now. It was a big mistake by Lou Lamoriello and the New York Islanders to have Anthony Duclair come back when he did. In hindsight, that was a poor decision and really a rushed decision to try to give the Islanders some more scoring. I truly think if Matt Barzal does not go out for the season, they do not try to rush Duclair back. And again, looking at the stats, rushing him back did not work well at all. You could have replaced Duclair with any player in the minors, and they would have given you the exact production. He could not skate, and that was clear. And the hope is he can get back to what he was in the beginning of the season. Those first 5 games, it's even then 3 points in 5 games. It doesn't sound crazy. Duclair looked good at that point. If the Islanders get anything close to that for the next 3 years, I think fans will be happy. And I'm really hoping that is the case. Now, he has said his goal, his focus, is to be ready for Game 1 of the regular season. He's noted he's talking with the coaches, talking to Matthew Darche, really making a plan for that, whether or not he's going to play in preseason games. I'm hoping that Duclair is back for Game 1, but if he needs an extra week or two, he should take it. I think the clear lesson to learn from this is to not rush yourself back from injuries. And I really do wonder how much of this was just Duclair trying to play tough and really just not speaking up when he should have been more vocal about how much his body was hurting, not wanting to disappoint his team. Now, we also got some more updates on what Patrick Roy is thinking of Anthony Duclair, just based on him telling who he expects to be his starting 9 to start training camp. Now, he made it very clear that he joked that he almost regretted saying this because there are going to be a lot of changes early. Again, we talked about it on the channel. I think this will be a lot of mixing and matching with Islanders lines as Patrick Roy looks for what works with this offense, especially now that the only duo on this team that we really know works well in Bo Horvat and Matt Barzal are now separated. There's going to be a lot of variables here, but he has currently Anthony Duclair playing on the third line with Pageau and Holmstrom. And it's notable that he only gave 3 lines because Patrick Roy isn't saying whether or not players like Pierre Engvall or even Maxim Siplikov are going to be in the lineup. So the fact that he has penciled into his early top 9, again, it's early top 9, but the fact that he already has Duclair penciled into this shows that Patrick Roy still has faith in this player. And I think a big part of why he was so frustrated is Anthony Duclair is a player that he vouched for to get him to the Islanders, and I think not realizing how injured he was a little disappointed with Duclair making him look bad. Although I will say, now it's clear to me Patrick Roy has not given up on this player, because he could have given us a top 9 and not had Duclair in it. He could have put Siplikov here. He could have put Heineman here. So the fact that he still has Duclair in his top 9, or at least giving him a look in the top 9, shows he still has faith in this player. And I'd love to know in the comments whether or not you still have faith in this player. Yes, I know a lot of you want to trade Anthony Duclair. Again, until we see better numbers, it's not going to happen. I'm not expecting Anthony Duclair to have a full bounce back to form. I really don't think at this point that the player who's able to put up a pace of 60 points in a full season is there. And again, Duclair is a player who has suffered multiple injuries in his career. This was not his first injury. Still, I'm predicting he's going to have a 30-point season for the Islanders this season on a third-line role and be a real contributor for the team. And if he does that, I think I would be satisfied. But I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments below. As always, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel. My name is Patrick Nilan. Catch you on the next episode of Islanders Digest. Let's go, Islanders.